And our comments and our thoughts will be taken from verses 1 through 12, reading from that passage. Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Gathering together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. And they said to him, "In Bethlehem of Judea. For this is what has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the leaders of Judah. For out of you shall come forth a ruler, who will shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called the Magi and determined from them the exact time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. And when you have found him, report to me, so that I too may come and worship him." After hearing the king, they went their way, and the star which they had seen in the east went on before them until it came and stood over the place where the child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And after coming into the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they fell to the ground and worshipped him. Then opening their treasures, they presented to him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned by God in a dream not to return to Herod, the Magi left for their own country by another way. Ever since I was a young boy, I've always been intrigued about the way God has done things, particularly how he has done things with respect to the incarnation, to the coming of Christ. Here he is, the King of Kings. Here he is, the creator of the universe, the sustainer of the universe, and he has to be born in a manger. What's going on here? And then afterwards, when we come to chapter 2 of Matthew, possibly as much time has gone by as 2 years. And look where he is. He's stuck in the house of a carpenter. This is the king, the creator, and the sustainer. And you say to yourself, what is happening here? And it reminds me of what has been said throughout history about our faith. We're going to propose that the Christian faith is both the company and the testimony of fools. It always has been that way, and it always will be. And the Magi are a good and early example of the company of fools. Their foolishness is observed in their perception, their purpose, and their presence. Stop now and think for a moment. If you are here today at church because you've confessed Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior, you are a part of the fellowship of fools. We should change the name of the church to the fellowship of fools, because that's exactly who we are in the eyes of the unbeliever. I should imagine that when you came to faith in Christ, some people were saying about you, "He's a nice person, but he's got this weird thing about Jesus." Or, "She's a very nice lady, but she's got a real strange thing about Jesus." And it comes out being foolish. And so we are a part of the company of fools. And the Magi, of course, became examples of that. And it's an either or. This is the way the philosophers of history have put us in there. And God has done the same thing. It's an either or. Either we are fools for him or fools for them. But none of us get out of this without being a fool. Now then, if that's too harsh, stick with me. Don't leave yet. I hope it gets better. We've made the darkness very dark so that the light will be lighter still. Notice now that the Magi's perception. This is really rather interesting in my view. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." They don't know really who these Magi are. They're not really kings, but they're the elite of the day. They're the philosophers, the theologians. They're the ones who have all of the brains and insight to govern well. And they're referred to as kings, but they really aren't. We don't even know their names. Melchior, Gaspar, Balthazar, they come to us by way of tradition. But let's take it for a minute that this is their names. Gaspar looks to his wife and says, "Don't hold dinner for me, I won't be home tonight." "Why, where are you going?" "Well, I'm going over to Israel, and that's probably a 6-month journey if we don't get waylaid somehow. So don't wait up for me either." And we see Balthazar's wife and Gaspar's wife and Melchior's wife all getting together and saying, "You know what? These guys are supposed to be very smart, but look what they're doing. They're packing up the camels, they're getting all these people to protect them along the way, and they don't even know who they're going to see, except that there's some star." Wouldn't you think of it, that there's more than one star in our celestial bliss around here? Couldn't they study those and get some messages that take care of the folks at home? Something like this, I think, might be going on. Just my view, and take it for what it was. But notice this. They witnessed a rising star, and they gave witness to the significance of that star, probably because of the Jewish influence from the time of Daniel and even before. It heralded the birth of the king somehow, and it heralded the birth of a Jewish king, and it heralded the birth of a divine Jewish king. Can't get any better than this, don't you think? At any rate, they knew that they were going to see splendor. They were going to see majesty. They were going to see a divine king. And that was their perception, and that was enough to send them on their way. But notice the Magi's purpose as well. When they get to Jerusalem, they say, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." Actually, the text places an emphasis upon they were continually asking the question. Here are these wise men from far away going door to door. This is the first sign of door-to-door ministry. Is the King of the Jews in your house? Don't you think it's a bit strange that they couldn't find him in a palace? There were palaces there. Herod was not a very good king so far as taking care of his people. He killed his wife, I think a second one. He killed some of his sons. Some of the in-laws got killed as well. He was not the kind of person that you'd want to be a relative. But he made great buildings. He restored the temple, and there were other buildings that he put up. If you can just give him some plans and some cement, you're safe. But notice they could not find, and so there they were, going door to door, really making things a bit difficult. But where is he who is born the King of the Jews? This is their stated purpose. But notice the support that was necessary for that purpose. There was the investment of time. There was the investment of money. There was the investment of risk, of travel. His guards better be tougher than some of the thugs along the way. And there they were, they're going to find a foreign king. A king by human standards would have little or no impact upon them, more than likely. But there they were going to worship a divine king. And so they keep asking the question till finally, now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who has been born of the King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and we've come to worship." They found the capital city under foreign rule. This city that used to be the capital of Israel is now under the thumb of the Roman Empire. And they found a puppet king of foreign extraction. King Herod was an Idumean. He wasn't even Jewish. And they found no king worthy of worship. Certainly you're not going to worship Herod because he doesn't qualify, not only morally, but in terms of time. He has been born some time ago. This is just about his last year on this earth. So they found no king worthy of worship at all. But they were there to worship. They were there to find the king. And so we see that after hearing the king, they went their way. And the star which they had seen in the east went on before them until it came and stood over the place where the child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And after coming into the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they fell to the ground and worshipped him. Then, opening their treasures, they presented to him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. They come to Jerusalem, they find nothing. Herod hears the word and says, "Call these guys in, I got to know what's going on. Tell me about this baby that you're looking to worship. I want to worship him too. So when you find him, come on back and tell me where he is." So they found the star standing still. Notice he's in the house, not the manger. And there he was in that house with his mother. And notice, they were filled with joy. Now you can imagine that a house at that time, being rented perhaps or owned by a poor carpenter, was not exactly on the A+ of quality living. I doubt if there was very much square footage in the house. And here these people, these wise men come. And maybe this is why we call them wise. Notice that they look around them. There's nothing but low income. They look around them. There's nothing of majesty. They just found the star. And they found the house standing under the star, worthy of a carpenter, unworthy of a king. But the Magi were rejoicing because they found the king whose star they saw. And they saw him. They saw him without a throne room. But the only throne room that he'll ever have will be Golgotha. There he was without a throne, but the only throne that he'll ever have will be the cross. There he is without a palace, but the only palace that he will ever know is the tomb owned by another person. And with all of this, they bowed down before him. They bestowed their gifts upon him, and they worshiped him with reverential joy. Here is the message. The majesty is not in the environment. The majesty is in the person. When we sing majesty, we're not talking heaven. We're talking about the King of heaven and earth. When we speak of his majesty, we're speaking of him. Often is the time over the years we've heard people talking about walking the streets of gold and looking at all the pearly gates and this kind of business. Listen. All of those beautiful things take second place to the owner. When one stands before him, they bow the knee and they confess him to be Lord of all. And this is the whole point, that the majesty is in the person, not in the place. We've had people leave us. Some say they've gone to heaven. That's true. Some say they've left this place. That's true. Some say they've gone to be with the Lord. That's the truth. Without that, there's no place for us. And it's an either or. It's the argument of the fool. Notice that they left under the protection and presumably the blessing of God. And having been warned by God in a dream not to return to Herod, the Magi left for their own country by another way. And there we have it. And the story is Jesus, not the camels, not the flock at night, not the shepherds. The shepherds and the Magi only to the point that they focused on the babe. And that puts us at the either or. For the word of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. But to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. Our faith and our commitment to Christ is an ongoing testimony of fools. Let's face it. Step back for a moment and take a look at the way our society thinks. They think in terms of materialism. They overlook a lot of the gaps and the problems that cannot be solved. How does a piece of flesh on the finger differ from the brain so that the brain can do non-material things? That's a gap that has not been filled, friends, and it can only be filled by the existence of a soul that is answerable to Jesus Christ. That's what we're talking about, and that's why I say life is an either or. The philosophers have said it's either Jesus or no. When Kierkegaard told us to make the jump of faith, it was not a blind jump. It's in his writings. It's jump into the arms of Jesus, and it's quite clear. And so this is it. We always stand at the either or. Either we're fools for Jesus or we're fools for those who reject him. But we're going to be wise and fools all at the same time. In truth, it is foolishness to those who are perishing. To us, it's the power of God. For since in the wisdom of God, the world through its wisdom did not come to know God, God was well pleased through the foolishness of the message preached to save those who believe. I sometimes think that God put it up in such a way that Jesus Christ is someone to be shunned. Who wants to follow a carpenter? Who wants to follow somebody who was born in a manger? Who wants to follow somebody who lived in a crummy old house? Who wants to follow somebody who would say, the birds of the air have their nests, the foxes have their holes in the ground, but the Son of Man does not have a place to put his head? Who wants to follow a loser? Except when we find that the cross is empty, and when we find particularly that the tomb is empty, and those have seen him and said, my Lord and my God, there stands the decision. There stands the choice. For since the wisdom of God, the world through its wisdom did not come to know God, and that is foolishness. God was well pleased through the foolishness of the message preached to save those who believe. Let no man deceive himself. If any man among you thinks that he is wise in this age, he must become foolish, so that he may become wise also. Notice, and let's keep this in mind, no one in the Scriptures has ever called us to make a jump of blind faith. We have been called to put our faith and our trust in a person who is either telling the truth or is a gross liar, that he is the creator, he is the sustainer, he is the one who took on a body that he might obey his Father and become obedient to the cross, buried, put into the tomb, but 3 days later came out. This is the gift. And is it foolish to accept it? What have I lost? If I am wrong, what have I done all my life? If I've been faithful to my confession, I've tried to love God with the totality of my being, and I've tried to love my neighbor as myself, even my enemy. What's so wrong about that? When you take a look at what the secularists have to say, if they do not agree with me, we have the right to exercise power. Is there any difference between mine and theirs? Certainly is. And one of it is going to be foolishness forever, and the other not so. So the plain issue is, am I willing to become a fool and to become a part of the fellowship of fools, that I might know him who is the resurrection and the life? Thanks be to God for his indescribable gift. The gift is being extended, is the gift being received. Our Father, as we come to you in prayer, we thank you for the foolishness of the gospel. We thank you for the foolishness of the cross. We thank you for the foolishness of the whole thing, because in the end, this foolishness is your gift of life to us. And at this Advent season, we look beyond all of the lights and everything else until we see Jesus Christ, King of kings, Lord of lords, the Lord of this church, the Lord of our lives. We thank you for him, and it's in his name we do pray. Amen.